While I busied myself with chores, a sharp voice pierced through the air from the direction of the venue. "Where's Emily?" My father-in-law's tone carried a hint of frustration. Deciding it best to acknowledge my father-in-law, I made my way towards the venue. However, before I could reach them, snippets of conversation reached my ears. My husband and mother-in-law were speaking, their voices tinged with amusement. "Oh, if you're referring to Emily, she's occupied with tasks behind the scenes. Don't concern yourself. After all, what else would a wife be good for?" I go by Emily, a 23-year-old navigating the daily grind in an office setting. My romantic ties lie with Steve, an acquaintance with whom my introduction was anything but ordinary. In a twist of fate, our paths crossed through proximity, Steve residing in the apartment adjacent to mine. One leisurely day off, the tranquility was disrupted by a jarring commotion from Steve's abode. Did that sound like a collision against the wall? I pondered, mindful of my own modest noise level, with the television murmuring softly in the background. Unease crept in as my thoughts veered towards scenarios of mishap or distress. Compelled by concern, I tentatively nudged the doorbell of Steve's dwelling, met initially with silence. Undeterred, I persisted, the bell chime echoing through the hallway. A faint voice answered from within. "Who's there? Are you all right?" Summoning courage, I responded, and in due time, the door creaked open, revealing Steve on the other side. As the door swung open, a man teetered on the threshold, his demeanor suggesting imminent collapse. "Are you all right?" I inquired, concern knitting my brows as he leaned heavily against the doorframe. A bewildered expression etched across his face. "I'm famished. Can you believe it? I haven't had a morsel in days," he murmured, his voice tinged with exhaustion. "What?" Alarmed by his revelation, I hastily retreated to my own abode, scurrying for sustenance. Retrieving the sandwich and a flask of tea from the remnants of yesterday's provisions, I returned to his quarters. "Here, please take this," I offered, extending the meager offering. His eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you sure?" he questioned, a mix of gratitude and disbelief coloring his tone. "I'd be far more troubled if you were to starve," I replied earnestly. "Thank you for your kindness," he whispered gratefully, accepting the sustenance with trembling hands. With those words he tore into the sandwich, devouring it with remarkable speed. The tea followed suit, disappearing down his throat in swift gulps, eliciting a contented sigh. "Thank you for the meal. I genuinely thought my time was up. I'll definitely find a way to repay you for the sandwich." "No need for repayment. It's no trouble," I reassured him, concern lingering in my tone. "But why have you gone without food for so long?" Actually, after covering tuition and rent, I found myself completely strapped for cash. "So, you're a student?" I inquired. "I'm in my final year of college. And you? Do you have a part-time job?" "Unfortunately, the pub where I worked unexpectedly closed down," I explained. "That's dreadful. So, you weren't paid and your circumstances spiraled," he surmised. "I didn't want to burden my parents," I confessed. "I understand, but it's crucial to communicate with them. It's dangerous to be in a state like this," I cautioned. "You're right. I'll be more cautious," he promised. Following our conversation, his stomach emitted a low rumble. "Oh," I chuckled, unable to suppress a smile. "You must be famished." "Well, I can't deny it after days without a meal," he admitted with a sheepish grin. Deciding it was imperative for him to eat, I offered him some of my homemade fare. Initially hesitant, he relented when I insisted, expressing concern over the prospect of him succumbing to malnutrition. With that, I ushered him into my room, where a fragrant dish of fried rice awaited him. "This is delicious. It's been ages since I've tasted such a treat," he remarked between mouthfuls, his enthusiasm reminiscent of a child's, endearing in its simplicity. His hearty appetite stirred a sense of maternal warmth within me. As we savored the meal, we exchanged introductions and contact details, laying the foundation for a newfound connection. I urged him to reach out if he ever found himself in a bind. It wasn't long before he secured another part-time gig, landing a position at a restaurant that offered complimentary meals. "Thanks to you, I won't be facing starvation," he expressed gratefully. "I'm relieved to hear that," I replied sincerely. In recent times, upon returning from work, I started preparing extra portions, extending an invitation for him to join me for dinner. The solitude of solitary meals had begun to weigh heavily, making the shared repasts a welcome change. Lost in thoughts of our shared meals, his demeanor suddenly shifted, a seriousness clouding his expression. Is something the matter? I inquired, sensing his unease. With a gulp, he broached the topic, his words weighted with apprehension. Emily, would you consider going out with me? Huh? I stammered, caught off guard by his unexpected confession. I may just be a struggling college student, hardly a suitable match for you, but I've developed feelings for you. His candid confession caught me off guard. Though truth be told, I found myself drawn to him as well. Without hesitation, I accepted his proposal to start dating. I feel the same way about you, Steve, I admitted. His face lit up with joy at my response, and thus began our journey as a couple. We navigated the intricacies of our newfound relationship, delighting in conversations about trivial matters like whose apartment to spend time in, given our close proximity as neighbors. Our romance flourished, and upon his graduation from college, Steve secured a job. It was then that we made the decision to take our relationship to the next level by moving in together. Despite practically sharing living spaces already, we opted for a larger accommodation to ease the financial strain of rent. Our courtship persisted, culminating in marriage when I was 26 and Steve was 25. While our day-to-day routine remained largely unchanged post-wedding, one significant shift occurred: the emergence of Steve's mother as my mother-in-law. Previously, our interactions with her had been minimal. However, following our marriage, we found ourselves engaging with her more frequently. Despite her absence from our shared living space prior to tying the knot, she began visiting our home with increasing regularity after the wedding bells had chimed. Emily, have you even bothered to clean this room properly? My mother-in-law's sharp tone cut through the air. Ha! I faltered, taken aback by the sudden accusation. Just look at all this dust. I can't reach those high places, and I don't have the time to clean after work, she continued, her disapproval palpable. What? I'm not talking back, I'm just saying I can only do so much. I defended myself. You're just making excuses. I can't believe Steve married someone like you, she retorted, her words stinging with disdain. Such exchanges had become routine, with my mother-in-law seizing every opportunity to criticize me. With my work schedule dictating earlier departures and returns than my husband, I found myself enduring her relentless haranguing until his arrival. Each day, I diligently tended to household chores, hoping for the solace of my husband's presence to alleviate the tension. What's cooking? I turned to find my mother-in-law scrutinizing my culinary efforts. Huh? Grilled fish, I replied, puzzled by her sudden intrusion. Steve won't be satisfied with that. You should prepare something more elaborate, she declared, dismissing my choice. Mother-in-law, what's going on? I questioned as she discarded the fish I had prepared, tossing it into the trash. I can't believe I entrusted the daily cooking to you. From now on, I'll take charge, she proclaimed, taking me aback. What? If she takes over, it means she'll be here every day. That's not what I want, I protested internally. There's no need for that, mother-in-law. I'm perfectly capable of cooking, I interjected. No, I don't trust your cooking. I'll be here to cook every day, she insisted adamantly. Just then, my husband Steve walked in. She wasted no time consulting him on the matter. Oh, you're pitching in with the household chores? Mom, that's fantastic. Please do, he responded, oblivious to my objection. Ha! I exclaimed, stunned by his decision. I can't wait to cook with you, Emily, she chimed in, a triumphant grin spreading across her face. From that point onward, life became unbearable. Armed with a key obtained from Steve, my mother-in-law began to infiltrate our home, eagerly anticipating my return from work. You're late? Don't shirk your responsibilities just because I'm handling the cooking. Start cleaning now, she would bark, disregarding my exhaustion. Even when the house was reasonably tidy, she insisted on relentless cleaning, closely monitoring my every move. If I dared to pause for a moment's rest, she would unleash a torrent of scolding, leaving me with no choice but to comply, further exacerbating my fatigue. Without fail, she appeared daily to take charge of meal preparation, lingering to dine with us. In Steve's presence, she would disparage me, labeling me as ineffectual. Don't cause trouble for Mom, he would chide, redirecting blame onto me instead of addressing his mother's behavior. With her husband working abroad, my mother-in-law lived alone, affording her ample time to invade our space with unwavering frequency. She began applying pressure for us to start a family. There's nothing more rewarding than parenthood. Hurry up and give me a grandchild or two, she urged persistently. Even if we wanted to, it's not something we can rush. It takes time, I countered, attempting to reason with her. Young people nowadays always have excuses. I had Steve right after I got married, she retorted, dismissing my explanation. Ha! Maybe it's because you were a homemaker. That's why, I suggested. What? She exclaimed, taken aback by my response. I mean, your circumstances were different. You had the luxury of being a full-time housewife, I clarified. What kind of logic is that? She scoffed. If you're able to fully support your husband's career, you'll have more time to focus on starting a family. But with your demanding job, it's understandable that you're exhausted, she continued, her words cutting. How can you say that? That's incredibly insensitive. I don't think it's that simple, I protested. Enough. Just stop, she snapped, cutting me off abruptly. If you don't conceive soon, we'll find another wife, my mother-in-law declared bluntly. Another wife? I echoed in disbelief. Of course. A woman who can't bear children holds no value, she asserted callously. In this day and age, it's inappropriate to make such discriminatory remarks, I countered, shaking my head at her archaic views. You always have to argue, don't you? I'll be sure to tell Steve, she retorted, her face flushed with anger. Ironically, it seemed she was the one who couldn't refrain from arguing. When Steve returned home, his mother wasted no time recounting the incident. Emily, did you argue with my mom? What were you thinking? He demanded, his voice tinged with frustration. It's probably your fault that we can't have children, he accused, directing his anger towards me. What? Are you saying that too? There's no way it's my fault. What nonsense, I retorted, frustration simmering beneath the surface. My patience wore thin as my husband once again took his mother's side. Contemplating the possibility of divorce, I couldn't shake the feeling of being constantly undermined. However, amidst these tumultuous thoughts, tragedy struck with the passing of my husband's grandmother, who had been hospitalized. As preparations for the funeral commenced, I found myself torn. Despite contemplating divorce, attending the funeral was an obligation I couldn't ignore. Yet to my dismay, both my husband and his mother insisted that I stay out of sight. Don't come here, just stay in the back and handle the chores, they directed me. Feeling marginalized and disregarded, I resigned myself to the menial tasks of preparing tea and tending to household chores in the background. Amidst the somber atmosphere of the funeral, I resolved to leave my husband once the ordeal was over. As I went about my chores, the sound of raised voices echoed from the gathering area. Why isn't Emily here? My father-in-law's voice cut through the air, signaling his return from an overseas trip. It made sense for him to be present, given the occasion, his mother's funeral. Feeling obligated to acknowledge him, I decided to make my way to the venue. However, as I approached, I overheard my husband and mother-in-law exchanging disdainful remarks with smirks plastered on their faces. It's clear she's not part of the family. We've relegated that woman to menial tasks in the back, they sneered, not even bothering to lower their voices in front of my father-in-law. Their audacity astonished me. Their behavior remained unchanged despite the circumstances. In the next moment, my father-in-law's enraged voice thundered, punctuating the tense atmosphere. Are you kidding me? What do you think a wife is for? My father-in-law's sudden outburst left my husband and mother-in-law visibly taken aback. What's gotten into you? My husband stammered, clearly surprised by his father's reaction. Yeah, you really caught us off guard, my mother-in-law chimed in, her tone tinged with disbelief. I'm appalled by your mindset. I need to speak with Emily, my father-in-law declared, his voice firm with resolve. Upon hearing his words, I made my way to where they were gathered. Father-in-law, it's been a while, I greeted him politely. Yes, indeed, he replied. As I entered, I couldn't help but notice the disdainful glares from my mother-in-law and husband. Emily, could it be that you've been enduring this treatment from my son and wife? My father-in-law inquired, his expression grave. Yes, she's been coming to our home almost every day to criticize me, and Steve has been joining in to blame me, I confess, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders as I spoke the truth. As I spoke, my father-in-law's gaze turned stern as he directed his ire towards his wife and son. You two are despicable. Have you no shame? He chastised them. What's happening? My husband interjected, his confusion palpable. However, his father disregarded him, focusing his attention on me. You two are truly beyond redemption, he lamented, shaking his head in disappointment. Turning to me, my father-in-law posed a question. Emily, what do you think? Do you wish to continue your marriage with my son? Dad, what are you saying? My husband protested, his voice tinged with panic. Ignoring his outbursts, I met my father-in-law's gaze and spoke firmly. I want a divorce. Emily, are you serious? My husband's voice wavered with disbelief. Your mother made it clear that if I couldn't bear a child, I should be replaced, I explained, my words heavy with resignation. Wait a minute, Emily. What are you saying? He pleaded, desperation creeping into his tone. I refuse to stay with a mother-in-law who spouts such cruel sentiments, and I'm tired of a husband who sides with her instead of standing up for me, I declared, my resolve unwavering. So, I've made up my mind. I want a divorce. Upon hearing my decision, my father-in-law interjected, I think that's for the best. If you're going to end the marriage, there's no need for you to assist with the funeral any longer, Emily. Thank you for your help thus far. You should go home and pack your things. Thank you. I appreciate your understanding, father-in-law, I replied gratefully before exiting the venue. The color drained from my husband and mother-in-law's faces as her words echoed throughout the room, heard by all the gathered relatives. News of their mistreatment towards me spread swiftly, casting a chilly shadow over their reputations. Following the revelation, aided by my father-in-law's support, I proceeded with the formal divorce for my husband. It appeared that the incident had left such a deep impression on my father-in-law that he also chose to end his marriage with my mother-in-law. Left abandoned by my father-in-law, my mother-in-law found herself with nowhere to turn. Desperate, she sought refuge at my ex-husband's doorstep. However, thus far, I've been shouldering the majority of the living expenses. If my ex-husband and mother-in-law continue their spending habits on food and other miscellaneous items as they always have, their finances will undoubtedly dwindle. Considering my ex-husband's lack of savings, rumors suggest they're struggling to make ends meet. But frankly, it's no longer my concern, so I'm not overly bothered by their financial woes. Meanwhile, I've settled into my own single-person apartment and am relishing the freedom of my solitary life. I recently adopted a cat, so I don't foresee dating being a priority for me anytime soon.